when it comes to the economy, 2010 was another grim year for most people. Foreclosures nearly 1 million as of November, and home prices dropped 1.5%. And then there's the job market. We wrapped up the year with the unemployment rate still at 9.8%. And even though more than 950,000 jobs were added this year, we're still down about 6.5 million since the recession began. Now, with all that in mind, the question is, will things get better in 2011? Well, here to talk about that is Liz Ann Saunders, Senior Vice President and Chief Investment Strategist at Charles Schwab, and Michael Santoli, Senior Editor for Barron's. Happy New Year to you both. Thanks for coming in.
Happy New Year.
Michael, I want to begin with you. We know that the market hates uncertainty. A lot of that stemmed from what we saw out of Washington. We did see the Bush tax cut get extended. Good sign for the markets. Also, we know that the market typically does well in split Congress sessions. So what can we expect going forward
Well,
now?
that does actually put historical tailwinds behind the market right now. Obviously, the tax legislation, I think, got more attention on Wall Street than maybe it's going to have in terms of impact economically in 2011. But I do think it's definitely a net positive. It's stimulative in the sense that not only are we continuing the old tax rates, but you're actually giving a payroll tax break, and you have these concessions for business investment. Businesses remain very flush with cash, big businesses especially. So I do think that right now the uncertainty has been lifted. The question is whether the market has kind of built a lot of that in with this rally in the last few months.
Yeah, we did see the market up some 10% in 2010.
Right.
The question is, how far will that go? Liz Ann, I do want to talk about businesses with concern to CEOs and the administration. There was a lot of friction that we saw there between the two. A CEO said that friction enabled them from hiring more people. There was a lot of uncertainty. We saw the president rally some of these CEOs in for a meeting a few weeks ago. Where do we see that relationship going next year?
I think you're starting to see the right moves. You did see the president at the end of the year bring a lot of CEOs in. So he is making a concerted effort to reach out a little bit more. It was actually, though, one of many uncertainties that I think business leaders had. That one, I don't know that we can write off as concluded, but as Mike was talking about, we've got the uncertainty past us in terms of the tax deal. The credit environment is improving. We've got all of this cash, and I think some of the hindrances to using that, particularly for hiring, are starting to disappear. And I think that looks very, very good going into 2011.
And do you see the president taking that sort of triangulation move to smooth things over with the business community in 2011? And how will that affect the ultimate economy and get people hired?
I think you probably will continue to see a move a little bit more conciliatory a tone with business. Businesses became very vocal in their frustrations with at least the perceived lack of focus on businesses and the realization that it is business that creates jobs. So I think, and I hope, you are seeing the beginning of a renewed cooperation between the administration and business broadly.
And renewed cooperation and friendship is all good, but at the end of the day, everyone at home is wondering when we're going to see that unemployment rate drop. Yeah. What can we expect in 2011?
You know, I do think the unemployment rate should be dragged down by the trends that we already have in place. Obviously, we started in a bigger hole than we did in previous post-recession economies, but it's been a similar jobless recovery as we've had in the early 90s and the early part of this year. I do think the leading indicators of job growth are in place. In other words, temporary hiring is up dramatically. Businesses have record profit margins right now. Large companies do. That usually is a leading indicator of hiring at some point down the road. So I do think that you're going to have the ingredients there. The question is, it might not feel satisfying. It might not actually come down dramatically enough that people feel as if jobs are plentiful, but I do think the trends are pretty much in place for a positive move there.
And Liz Ann, we have seen a rise in consumer confidence over the past few months, but of course that all stems down to how people feel within their own pocketbooks and their wallet. A lot of that depends on their home prices. What do we expect to see with regards to foreclosures this year, and will home prices start to rise?
I think housing broadly is finding its bottom right now. But what I think we are entering into is a more normal environment. What I mean by that is housing has always historically been very regional in nature. Pockets of strength, pockets of weakness. And then we had the bubble tide lift all boats. And then when the tide went out, it took all boats with it. So we would talk about housing in a very national sense, in this singular sense. And I think that's starting to break down. And we're going to have to start looking at where the pockets of strength and where the pockets of continued weakness. That said, I think broadly we are finding a bottom. That is becoming, I think, less important to the overall economy than it has been in the past, even by virtue of just the math. It's just a smaller portion of the economy, and I think the confidence associated with jobs. And I think one of the reasons why consumer spending has done so well is because it's got a very high correlation to the stock market, which has obviously performed very well.
And we did see a rather smooth and increased holiday spending season as well. Okay, finally, I want to get your predictions for the year. Surprise us. Lizanne, first I want to start with you. You were one of the first to come out and call official end to this recession. What can you tell us that's going to surprise us this year for 2011?
I think the economy is going to be stronger than a lot of people think. I think the consumer will continue to be a bigger driver, and I think the business side is going to surprise significantly in terms of certainly business capital spending, and I think what happened in the tax package is a big part of that. But I also think we're going to be surprised on the hiring front.
Very quickly, Mike.
I would agree with all that. I also think you might see the signs of a corporate merger boom and a lot of deal making, and I think that probably will excite the stock market on some level.
All right, well, we shall see. Thanks for joining us. Happy New Year to you both again.
Happy New Year.
As well.